In this video workshop, you're going to learn about 3 things. You'll discover what you love to do. Number 2, you'll determine where you want to work. And third, you'll match your skills to the employer's needs. Choosing a career for your future is like putting together a puzzle. The biggest piece is understanding yourself and what's inside. What are your skills, interests, and unique talents? What are you curious about? What do you do in your free time? And what activity so interests you that you lose all track of time when you're doing it? It's important to take a look inside and know for yourself. Every job is about solving problems. Does your employer want you to transport materials by driving a truck? Or does your employer want you to use your sewing skills to sew a few uniforms? Does your employer need you to create websites? What skills do you have? Skills are a developed ability. Skills help you solve problems. Transferable skills. Skills you are good at in situations or circumstances, regardless of the place or time. There are many pieces to the career puzzle, but the key one is to figure out what types of different problems you yourself likes to solve. A good way to think about skills is dividing them into 4 categories of problems to solve. Do you want to work with things like a plumber or a computer technician? Do you like working with people, such as teachers or nurses? Do you enjoy working with data, like an accountant or an office worker? Do you want to work with ideas like a journalist, fine artist, or even an actor? It can be helpful to put these in order from the type of problem you would most enjoy to the type you would least enjoy working on. Knowing what you don't like to do is also very helpful in narrowing down those choices. Another key is to think about where you want to work. What kind of business? Where is it located? Who will you be working with? For example, would you prefer a small business or a very large company? Would you like to work close to home or far away? Do you enjoy working by yourself or with lots of other people? Are you open to moving to a new city or a state? Knowing where you want to work will also help you figure out exactly which jobs you should apply for. Understanding why we work is also important. Besides earning income, what do you value? For example, is it important that you learn something new? Is it important that you accept responsibility? Or be a contributor? Possibly build relationships. What skills do employers want? Employers post job openings to fill a need. They're looking for people who have certain skills. It's important that you make sure your skills match what the employer is looking for. If your skills don't match, then the employer will not consider you for the job. If you really want to do something that you love, you should find a job that requires the skill you already have, or the skills that you are good at using, as well as enjoy using. If you think you want to try something completely new, you need to consider a job where you will get the skills necessary in order to perform that job. This may mean more training, schooling, volunteering, or even an internship to make sure that you have what the employers are looking for. The hardest task of actually doing what we love is figuring out who will pay you for doing what you love. One way to figure out who is paying people to do what you love is to do some research. You can do that research online on different websites such as this one here, www.onetonline.org. That's a great place to start. You should also consider finding people who are already doing the same kind of work that you want to do. You can accomplish this through networking with people you know, or joining an online networking community like LinkedIn. If you want to do what you love, you can't just wait around for your dream job to fall in your lap. Here are a few ideas to get started. Volunteer. Keep doing your hobby to hone in those skills. Find someone who is doing what you love and talk with them about their job and their career path. Next, be proactive, which means be actively involved. If a certain career is your passion, persevere. It may be a struggle, but never give up. The reason being is you may find that job which gives you the happiness, and you will be thankful that you persevered. This video workshop focuses on building effective resumes. Resumes are much more than a simple list of your education and work experiences. It's very important. Your resume is an advertisement or a sales brochure. It's marketing a tool to sell a product. Many people think the main purpose of your resume is to get you a job. This is incorrect. Your resume is supposed to get you an interview. Sitting for an interview with an employer is where you get the job. The resume is just a tool to get you invited to meet the employer. Before you begin writing a resume, you need to do some thinking and research. The first thing you need to do is focus on a specific job title or a posted position that you are interested in. The next thing you need to do once you locate a position you're interested in, do research to learn as much as you can about the job, such as educational requirements, a degree, license, or certification. Those are the details you need to look into to make sure you're prepared for the job. And third, once you've located the position you're interested in, decide what makes you highly qualified to do that job. It's important to look inside to make sure that everything you want matches. Once the first three are complete, you're ready to create your resume. Now let's get started by building a resume and learning all about the different sections of a resume. There are lots of different sections in a resume. Some sections of information must be on every resume, while others are optional. Now we're going to discuss the required sections on all resumes. There are three categories. The first one is your contact information. Second, your employment history and your experience. Third, your education. Those three sections are always required on each resume. Now the other section, the optional section, is where you would include what we call the objective. Again, the objective is optional. Now I'm going to show you what a contact information list looks like. You must always include the following: your name, address. Underneath that, your telephone number or your video phone number. And at the very end, your email address. Now, in the email address line, it's important not to have Crazy Sue put in there or any other silly names. Those are not recommended. It's best to use a professional name in an email to make it easier for companies to recognize you. Now that we've covered the contact information, we're moving on to objectives. An objective would come next on a resume if you choose to include one. An objective is a brief statement describing in general the type of position you are seeking. They explain to the reader why you are sending them your resume. An objective is optional, as some people feel that everything an objective says should be included in the cover letter. Here is an example of an objective. Suppose I'm a person seeking a position in retail, where outstanding customer service skills are needed, and I am a perfect match. That's something that you would put on there, for example. The next section required on all resumes lists your employment history or experiences if you have ever worked. You need to list the jobs in reverse chronological order, the most recent being first. An employer is usually interested in your most recent job first, and anything that you have done in the past that is relevant for the position in which you are applying for. You must match the qualifications. That's important. When listing your work history, it's important to follow a step-by-step instruction. You must list the employer's name, location, meaning city and state, and the dates of employment, as well as the position that you held, which is very important. Your job title, responsibilities, and duties should also be included in this section, and this is what it should look like. Part of the employment history includes a description of responsibilities, duties, and accomplishments. When giving these descriptions, follow these guidelines. Provide a statement describing your overall responsibility first, saying responsible for or used, and then fill in your phrase, what your duties were. Then make sure you explain what you did, how well you did it, and the volume or quantity and how often you dealt with it. It's also important to include how often you worked at that type of position. Was it every day, lots of hours, or just weekly? Include that. At the end, it's important to explain your successes and the results of the company you worked for. What value did you add to the company? And now, I'm going to provide you with an example of what that looks like. Used professional video phone etiquette to answer approximately 100 business-related calls per day. That would be an example of demonstrating your responsibilities. The next section of the resume lists your education and should follow these guidelines. It's the same process as you started with your job experience history. As far as licensing, high school graduation, college, you start with the most recent first and work backwards. The last part of your resume is for you to list anything else that is relevant to the job you are applying for. Here are a few examples. First, they include your professional memberships. Which means, if you'd like to be an engineer by profession, you would be involved in professional organizations that relate to engineers. Or maybe you want to support the deaf community and you want to work within a deaf organization. You could get involved with NAD, the National Association of the Deaf. That's a membership that's affiliated to your profession or field of interest. Second, any volunteer experience that you may have that relates to the job. Third, any professional training if, again, you'd like to be an engineer and you had gone to specific trainings and past certifications for improving your skills, it's okay to include that because it relates to the job. And the last one you see here other relevant skills pertaining to the job you're looking for. Anything that you've done in the past, experiences or knowledge that you have pertaining to that job, go ahead and include that here. If you want your resume to be the best it can be, then you should follow these steps. It's important to remember, the best resumes are custom designed to a particular job or title. Don't use that same resume that's tailored for one position and send it to another. It's important to tailor each resume for each position to get the best possible results. Include only relevant information for that job, not other jobs that are in different fields. Third, on your resume you should include accomplishments that demonstrate good work performance. And fourth, I can't emphasize enough, no spelling or grammatical errors. Make sure your resume is properly formatted. And last, here are the things you should not include on your resume. First, do not include the word resume at the top. Second, putting salary information or desired earnings is not advisable. Third, the reasons you've left prior jobs, whether they be fired or laid off, do not include that. Personal information, such as the year you were born, your social security number, whether you're married, divorced, involved, have children, don't include any of those things. Names of past supervisors or references should not be included. References belong on a separate page. And that page should be entitled References. Your hobbies or interests, things you do in your leisure time, should not be included as well. And now, the last thing, lies. Never, ever lie on your resume. When you apply for a job, many employers require you to fill out a job application. This workshop focuses on job applications, and we will be looking at questions and answers that you may have, and we can help you prepare to fill them out. Specifically, we will be looking at why and how employers use job applications, also common mistakes, and tips to avoid those mistakes. Red flags, or things employers look for that could cost you the chance at the job. Here we will further explain those points. There are many things employers must be concerned about when hiring workers. Listed here we have a lack of expertise or skills. Perhaps you have a poor work ethic. Unable to build a good rapport with people. Next we have dishonesty or theft. Chronic absenteeism or tardiness. Here we have personal or personality issues. And finally, lawsuits. Because of these concerns, employers must be very careful when hiring people to try and avoid these potential problems. One of the ways for an employer to try and avoid these problems is by asking the applicant to fill out a job application. This is an opportunity for the employer to get to know the person applying for the position before they have a chance to look at their resume. Employers use this as a way to eliminate anyone they feel is not right for the job and select people they would like to learn more about. Job applications are different from resumes. While a lot of the information they collect is the same, each of them collects different information as well. Unlike a resume, a job application is signed. An employer asks you to sign it as a statement that the information you provide is true and accurate. To the employer, that job application represents a legal document. Lying or providing false information on a job application can cause you to lose your chance at getting the job. Why do employers use job applications? There's a wide range of reasons, as you can see here. To collect information from the applicants. The company may want to evaluate your experience and your skills. To gain a first impression. And see who you are before the job interview. To communicate legal information. Or to gather information before asking for a resume. And finally, to weed out all of the unqualified applicants. These are some different reasons why employers ask for job applications. How do employers screen applications? First, they look to see if the application is neat, complete, and accurate. Second, they look to see if you have job-related experience, as well as the skills they require necessary to complete the job. Third, companies will look for what we call red flags, or obvious things that could tell them that there may be problems if they hire you. These can include terminations, past employment gaps that you do not explain, incarcerations, and excessive job hopping. That's another example of a red flag. This information is how companies analyze whether or not you're a valid applicant. Here are some of the top 10 mistakes people make on job applications that you must avoid. First, not following directions. Second, as you can see here, being hard to read or not neatly printed. Next, questions or sections left blank. A wrinkled or messy application. Misspelled words. Not applying for a specific position. An incomplete work history. Large, unexplained gaps in your work history. If you don't disclose that information, that does not look good. Not turning it in by the deadline. Or turning in an application that has yet to be signed. Here are some of the mistakes people make on job applications that you must avoid. Here are a few tips you should follow when filling out a job application. First, it is important to be honest in your answers. Next, use blue or black ink pens. Erasable if you can. Have your information on hand. You can create a fact sheet that contains all of your information so you're ready to fill out any job application. Print clearly and legibly. No cursive. Do not put any or open when asked about the position you desire. It is important to always apply for a specific position. Here are some more tips. When filling out an application, do not leave blanks. Use does not apply or NA if the term does not apply to you. Explain lengthy gaps. For example, attending school or at-home caregiver. It's important to have a reason or explanation for the gap. Be sure to sign and date the application and turn it in before the deadline. Now you should have a pretty good idea of what a job application is and what to expect when filling one out. Usually, when applying for a job, the employer will ask if you have any references. This workshop focuses on references. Specifically, we will be looking at two things. One, what exactly are references? And two, what are general guidelines for preparing a reference list? There are many things employers must be concerned about when hiring workers. The first, lack of experience or skills. Next, having a poor work ethic. Dishonesty and theft. Chronic absenteeism and tardiness. Personality issues and personal issues that may arise. And finally, lawsuits. Because of these concerns, employers must be very careful when hiring people to try and avoid these potential problems. If you don't have anything on this list, companies will be less concerned about hiring you as a worker. One of the ways for the employer to try and avoid these problems is by asking the applicant for a list of references. The employer will take your reference list and contact your references in what is called a reference check. Contacting your references gives the employer an opportunity to talk with people who know you. This might include people you worked for, like a past supervisor or a coworker. References might also include others who know you and can answer questions the employer might like to know about you. Employers check references to make sure you are the right fit for the job before they hire you. What are references? References are people who you know from a previous job or internship, maybe a volunteer position you've had, or school. You need to decide whom to put on your reference list. And make sure you ask people if you can put them down on your reference list before you include them. Tell the people you would like on your reference list what kind of a job you are looking for and give them a copy of your resume. Now, it's important to make sure these people are willing to talk to employers and that they're going to say good things about you. If you ask someone to be a reference and then are not sure if they are going to say good things about you, then leave them off the list and ask someone else. You can create a list of people and their contact information to give to an employer if they ask for your references. Here are some additional guidelines for reference lists. Do not include your references on your resume. Bring them to the job interview on a separate sheet of paper. Give them to the employer if they ask you for them. Have 3 to 5 professional references and 1 to 2 personal references. Professional references are people who can provide information about your past job performance and employability. Preferably, someone who was your boss, manager, or supervisor. Personal references are people who can provide information about your character and know who you are, talent and skill-wise. These can be coworkers, customers, teachers, and acquaintances. And finally, do not list family or friends as personal references. This is a reference list template. At the top of the page, you want to put your contact information. Employers will want to contact your references, so you must provide them with the following information. Here's what it looks like. First, their name, their affiliation or title at the company they work, their address, phone number, followed by their email address. Now you should have a good idea of what references are, how to build a reference list, and when to present them to the employer. And you know the right time to present that information to the company. Sending a business email is not like sending a message to your friends or family. Your email messages represents you and your company to other business professionals. As with any form of communication, you will be judged on what you say and how you say it in an email message. It is important that you follow these simple rules of professional email etiquette to make sure your email communications make the right impression. If you are using a company email address on company equipment, it is your responsibility to use those tools in a professional manner that relates to the job you were hired to do. This means that sending non-business related emails, forwarding jokes, chatting to emails and friends or coworkers is unprofessional. Make sure you are using the company email address for work-related communication only. Many companies monitor their technology use, so you should assume that others will read and monitor anything you send. The first thing you do typically when composing an email message is to address it to the person or people you are sending it to. There are 3 fields to choose from. The to, T-O, this is where an email address goes to the person or persons you are sending the message to and whom you expect to get a response from. The second one, CC, which stands for carbon copy. This carbon copy field where you put the email address is for anyone who should receive this message for information only. When you put an address in this field, the person is not required to respond or comment to this message. BCC, blind carbon copy. Typically, it's inappropriate to use this field. When people are sending an email address, when you put it in the CC category, they can see it. In the BCC category, they cannot. The most important thing to remember when addressing an email message is to make sure you send it to only those people who need the information. Including too many people in the distribution list fills people's mailboxes with the unnecessary email messages and wastes people's time if they do not need to be included in the communication. The subject line is the next field you must fill in. You must always include a short descriptive statement in the subject field that tells the person receiving your email what it is about. Sometimes if it's not clear what you're emailing about, your message may not even be read, so be short and clear about what your message contains. For example, response to questions regarding benefits. Next, questions in regards to sales figures you requested. It is never appropriate to send an email with a blank subject line. When composing the body or the main part of the email message, you must first address the person you are sending the email to. This is also known as greetings or salutations. It is always best to address someone in a more formal manner, such as these examples here. Dear Miss Jones. Or next, hello, Mr. Nile. And finally, Dr. Smith, in a more formal manner. In the event you do not know who will be reading your email, it is acceptable to address it with this example here. Dear Sir, if it is a male, or the second example here, Dear Madam, if it's a female. You should continue addressing them in this formal manner until they invite you to call them by their first name. Similar to the greeting, the body of the email message should be written in a more formal, business-like writing style. Some people make the mistake of thinking that the email is a more informal or casual type of communication. Over time, as you develop a relationship with a customer or fellow business person, you may begin to use a more informal language in your emails, but only time will allow this to develop. When in doubt, write as if you were composing a formal letter to be sent to the recipient on your company's letterhead. The body of the email should also be clearly written. Make sure your email can be easily understood and not create confusion for the reader. Next, be brief and to the point. Do not send extremely long email messages. A good rule of thumb is that it should not be over one screen in length. Make sure you make your point as quickly as possible. Next, it should be free of grammatical, spelling, and punctuation errors. There is no excuse to send an email message with any of these. Most email programs can do spelling and grammar checking. If your email program does not do this, or you are unsure, ask a coworker to proofread your email address before sending it. After the body of the email message, you should show the reader common courtesy by including a complimentary closing to your message, such as, first, a simple thank you. Next, sincerely. Then you sign your email messages with your name. If you communicate via email, you need to make sure you check your account as often as possible for messages. You should check your email several times a day, at least. It is also very important to respond to any messages you receive as soon as possible. As a guide, you should respond within 1 day of receiving the email message. When replying to an email message, all of the rules we have discussed apply to that response. One thing to be very careful about is selecting the Reply to All button. This means that your response to the email message will be sent to every person the sender of the original email chose to send their message to. You may not want all of these people to receive your reply, or it may be necessary that they all see your response. Always use caution before replying to any email messages. By following these rules of business email etiquette, you will show people that you are a responsible business professional who is capable of conducting business via email. Usually, when applying for a job, you need to include a cover letter with your resume. This workshop focuses on cover letters, and we will be looking at questions and answers that you have about them. Specifically, we will be looking at these 3 things. First, the purpose and goals of cover letters. Second, what you should include in a cover letter. And third, the most common cover letter content. We'll be explaining these 3 things in more detail shortly. What is a cover letter? A letter you send with your resume when you are applying for a job. You could think of it as the first page of your resume. A cover letter tells the employer that you are applying for a position and a brief description about that. It also briefly describes your qualifications for that position. Here's a question for you. Do you think employers read cover letters? The answer is maybe. Some employers like to read cover letters and decide whether they should look at the resume based on what they see. Others prefer to skip the cover letter and get right to the resume. Do I really need a cover letter? The answer is yes. Since you don't know if the employer will read the cover letter or not, you should always send one. What are the 2 main goals for a cover letter? 1. You want to get readers interested enough to read your resume. Your cover letter should tell people that you are interested in the position and give them a brief description of your qualifications to do that job. Now, the cover letter is not a duplication of the resume, but a preview of who you are. The cover letter should leave the reader wanting to learn more about you. Convince the reader to invite you in for an interview. If the cover letter does its job, then it will lead the reader to your resume. Between the cover letter and the resume, you want the reader to realize that you are a good fit for the job and that they would like to meet you in person to discuss the position. Ultimately, you want the reader to want to invite you in for an interview. Here are the purposes and objectives of cover letters. Introducing yourself to the employer. You must explain to the reader who you are and get them interested in you. Second, explain why you are writing the cover letter and specifically what position you are applying for. Make a good impression. You achieve this through the demonstration of your communication skills, enthusiasm, and confidence in the cover letter. Strongly match you to a specific position. Your qualifications, experience, education, skills, and achievements should match what the employer is looking for. Capture the reader's interest in you, your resume, and your availability. The reader should see you as a possible candidate for the job, and this should lead them to want to look more closely at your resume. Now you want to motivate the reader to review your resume and contact you for an interview. Having reviewed your resume, the reader should be interested in contacting you for an interview. Cover letters are written in a business letter format. They are formatted with the following business letter parts: the writer's name and address. This means your name and address. Then the date, meaning the date you are sending the cover letter. Address. This is the address where you will be applying for the job. Salutation. This is a greeting for whoever is going to be reading the letter. Now we have the body of the letter. This is where you tell the reader in 2 or 3 paragraphs what position you are applying for and briefly explain your qualifications. And finally, complimentary close. This is where you thank the reader for taking the time to read your cover letter and sign your name. Here are the general guidelines for writing a cover letter. Type all letters. Handwriting is simply unacceptable. It is important you use a standard 12-point font that is easy to read. Use single spacing for text and double spacing between paragraphs. Use 1.5-inch margins at the top, bottom, and sides of the letter. Address each letter to a specific individual. Include the person's name and title in the address. Never use "to whom it may concern." As a last resort, you can use these two options. First, "Dear Hiring Manager," or second, "Dear Human Resources Professional." The body of a cover letter should include, first, the intro, an introductory paragraph to focus the reader and grab their attention. Second, a match. 1 to 2 additional paragraphs providing background summary, how you can add value to the company, and other relevant personal traits that would make you an outstanding candidate. That, in turn, makes you more marketable than the other candidates. Third, action. A call for action from the reader. This is where you specifically ask them for an interview. Fourth, appreciation. A statement of appreciation to the reader for taking the time to read your cover letter, and hopefully they will consider you for the position. The introductory paragraph states the purpose of your letter. Are you responding to an employment advertisement? Or did someone within the organization refer you? It is important to arouse the reader's interest now so that he or she will want to read further. Otherwise, if you don't capture their interest, your cover letter and resume may be heading for the trash. Your introductory paragraph should be followed by 1 or 2 paragraphs that accomplish the following. Demonstrate your ability to be value-adding. What value will you add to the company if they hire you? Highlight your key strengths and abilities. And third, briefly summarize relevant education and experience and tailor it for that position. You must address every specific qualification in the job posting. Show the reader exactly how you can meet each qualification they are looking for in that job description. Now remember, do not take the information directly from their job description and copy it word for word. Your action statement is next. Your statement should accomplish all of the following. Requesting a personal interview. And it is important to inform the employer that you will be following up with them. And remember, always end with a thank you for your consideration. Here are some general cover letter content guidelines you should follow. Absolutely no spelling or grammatical errors whatsoever. Do not overuse the word I. And somewhere in your letter, you should invite the reader to read your resume. We have 2 examples here. 1, as you can see from my enclosed resume. Or 2. I invite you to read the enclosed resume where you will find, and then you can elaborate. It is not necessary to explain reasons for leaving former employers in the cover letter. Now you have a good idea about the purpose, goals, structure, and content of a cover letter. If you need additional assistance in developing cover letters, I encourage you to contact your local Michigan Works office for an appointment to meet with a staff member who will assist you. Virtual networking and having an online presence is important for today's job seeker. Social media is the #1 online activity in the United States. This video will cover a brief description of Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. All 3 of those are job search tools. Google yourself. If you have never Googled yourself, you should do that today. Why? Because employers are actually Googling you. You must know what they are reading about you. Ideally, you want job-appropriate information to come up rather than your old MySpace account. For example, if you work in the food industry and you have a blog about your food, you want that blog to come up so a possible employer will see that you are dedicated to your field. To tweet or not to tweet, all about Twitter. What is Twitter? Well, Twitter is a real-time information network that connects you to the latest information about what you find interesting. Next, at the heart of Twitter are small bursts of information called tweets. Each tweet is 140 characters in length, so you have to share a lot of information in a very little space. Less is more, and learning to be brief is a very valuable skill. So who uses Twitter? Actually, 7% of Americans use Twitter today. There are over 200 million users worldwide. In comparison, Facebook has more than 600 million users. LinkedIn has 100 million. It is expected that there will be over 1 billion Twitter users by the end of 2012. %40 of all tweets are made from mobile devices. And there are 460,000 new Twitter accounts created each day. Twitter users are more educated than the general population. They have higher incomes and tend to be early adopters. Twitter and how it relates to your job search. There are 3 categories. The first one here is really unique. It gives you access to other professionals in your field. When you follow industry leaders, you'll know who spends time with them, what conferences they attend, and what they think of the speakers, as well as what they're reading and what it is on their minds. This is great information to leverage for your search. It also gives you credibility and exposure, as well as personal and professional relationships when you connect to others in your industry. Third, it offers you a place where you can demonstrate your expertise and share information in a brief, concise manner, as well as wisdom. This is perfect if you don't have the time or energy to create a blog. So, keep it brief. These are the unique aspects of Twitter. First, it is casual and immediate, and a great place to meet informally. You will find lots and lots of different people on Twitter, including CEOs, top-level executives, hiring managers, recruiters, and everyone in between. It's the one-stop shop for your networking needs. You'll be surprised to find that stars in your field, mentors, may follow you if you reach out to them. Unlike Facebook, where it is kind of creepy if you start to friend people who are connected to your other contacts, it is acceptable and expected to follow people on Twitter because another friend or colleague is doing so. And finally, it forces you to be brief. Coming up with your Twitter pitch is like coming up with a short commercial. What you have to offer in 140 characters or less will help you clarify your value proposition. Remember, less is more. Facebook is not just for friends. I'm assuming that most of you have Facebook accounts, so I won't explain it. It's important to know that employers will look up your Facebook profile. Make sure it is clean, and you set your settings to maximize your privacy. Do not post inappropriate photos. Let Facebook be a place where you connect with friends, but also a place you would be okay with if your mom or grandmother saw. Can Facebook help you in your job search? The first one here is very important. The best way that Facebook can help you is by not hurting you. Putting up bad photos, obscene language, bad behaviors on Facebook is not recommended. Facebook is not designed for job seekers. Just make sure that your profile is appropriate. LinkedIn and Facebook for professionals. Having a LinkedIn profile is essential for all job seekers. It is a great tool for the deaf because, unlike traditional networking, this tool evens the playing field. Normally, you would need an interpreter to communicate with the hearing world. With LinkedIn, you can communicate directly and network yourself. Have a photo and fill out your profile completely. How can LinkedIn help you with your job search? There are a variety of ways. You can look for jobs, research different companies, and look at other people's resumes or professional backgrounds. You can post recommendations on your profile from former employers. You can expand your network by having contacts introduce you to other people that they are linked in with. You can also obtain insider information about a field by joining a group related to your profession. For example, medical transcriptionists or human resource professionals. You can reach out to staff at companies where you want to work for informational interviews. And finally, watch the LinkedIn video for more information. Social media is very popular. Make sure your online presence is impressive so that employers will want to hire you. You can utilize these social media tools to promote yourself to companies. Show them your skills, expertise, capabilities, and what kind of work you can perform. I'm sure you're familiar with the old saying, it's not what you know, but who you know. Well, that old saying has now evolved into, it's not what you know, but who you know. Not only that, but who they know and who knows you. In this video, we will cover the basics of networking and provide some strategies on expanding your network. Not only your network, but the network of contacts out there who can help you in your job search. Here's the definition of networking. It's the process of making connections with people, such as relatives, friends, current and former coworkers, as well as acquaintances who share common interests like hobbies, sports, or different experiences, who may have the same information about job opportunities, or be able to connect others with people who have the power to hire. Why is networking important? As you can see here, research has shown that less than 25% of all jobs get filled because employers advertised the job openings. At least 60%, some report even more, of all jobs are found by networking. Networking is reported to be the #1 way for finding a job. What networks do you have already? Here are a list of examples. Your former college and high school alumni groups, your neighbors, or your sports teammates. friends to your parents, as well as parents of your children's friends, your past coworkers, and professional group contacts. Your religious or community service groups. You should think broadly of all the people you know from many different aspects of your life and realize that they are a part of your network. How exactly can you increase or expand your network? It's actually through your everyday personal actions. First and foremost, always maintain a positive attitude. Make sure you follow through with contacts by either Facebooking them or connecting with them on LinkedIn, or setting up future in-person meetings. Remember, always be helpful to others. Don't think about what someone can do for you. Think about how you can help other job seekers by introducing them to someone or passing on a job lead. Remember to always make a good impression. Here's how. Always dress nicely. You never know who you might meet. Next, establish eye contact. Then, it's important when you meet someone not to have a soft handshake. Really have a firm handshake. Introduce yourself. And last but not least, be polite. Expanding your network by taking action. First, you should get to know your neighbors and friends of friends. It is oftentimes someone who you don't know very well who can pass on the best leads for your jobs. Let people know that you're looking for work. Prepare a 30-second commercial about who you are that highlights the value you bring to a job, including your transferable skills. Next, use social media to make contacts, whether that be via Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Join a professional group so that you can make contacts. And be involved in different discussions, because those discussions may lead to meeting new people. Have a networking game plan in place. If you're attending an event, see who's going and decide who you want to meet. Find out who you want to know at a company, and then try to find someone who may be able to introduce you. If you're not comfortable going alone and would like to take a friend with you, by all means. But when you arrive, don't stick together. Make sure you split apart and network. And also contact them to make arrangements for an interpreter if necessary. Typically, networking takes time. Just like a garden when you plant seeds, they need to be watered, and you may not see the buds for a while. Networking is a lifelong adventure. You may meet someone today who can help you out tomorrow. Or you may be able to meet someone today who won't be able to help you out for 2 years. Regardless, don't get discouraged. Just try to meet people and make a positive, lasting impression on them. So when they hear about someone needing your skills, they will in turn think of you and refer you to that job. Welcome to the LinkedIn Workshop. If you are in the market for a new job, or just want to make a professional connection, and network with other professional business people who are similar to you, then you have to be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social networking website, similar to Facebook. But LinkedIn is actually focused on business and professional networking. LinkedIn has been around since 2003. But more importantly, there are over 100 million LinkedIn members across the globe and in 200 different countries. Each second that ticks off the clock, a new member joins, and half of all members are outside of the United States. Executives from all Fortune 500 companies are members. You can use LinkedIn like you use all of these tools to network. Networking is the act of finding people, either in person or online, and forming relationships with them that benefit both of you. For a job seeker, this could mean connecting with people to try and find work. For a business owner, networking might bring them additional clients or get them connected with other people in the same business. Traditionally, people pick up the phone to call employers looking for a job, seeing if there are any openings or availabilities. With LinkedIn, you can find employers and contact them directly. The phone book, like the Yellow Pages. You can find employers in your area by looking them up in the phone book. LinkedIn also allows you to locate your employer in a similar way. Internet. You can Google a company or a person for information. Similarly, you can search for people of companies in LinkedIn. Email. Email can be less obtrusive than a phone call when trying to contact someone. The same is true with a LinkedIn message. There are many things you can do with a LinkedIn account. First of all, you can manage the information that's publicly available about you as a professional. This isn't your Facebook account, a place to stay in touch with your buddies or high school friends. This is professional. The focus with LinkedIn is your career and the professional information that you want to share with other professionals. Second, find and be introduced to potential employers, clients, service providers, and subject matter experts who come recommended. The recommendation is a really important part to LinkedIn. The more recommendations you have from people, the better you will look to an employer or to another professional. Settings in your LinkedIn account allow you to let others know in your network that you are available for business opportunities, mentoring, or other activities that you may need help with in order to develop your business relationships. Another feature of LinkedIn is group discussions with like-minded professionals in a private group setting in order to gain insight from other professionals as well. Like-minded professionals in the same field as your own. Also, going through LinkedIn, you can find other people connected to the companies which may help you get in to gain employment or seal deals. Companies tend to post and distribute job listings to find the best talent for your company. Many companies do this knowing that they have a better chance of locating people who are a good match. LinkedIn is all about relationships. Why do you build relationships? To make connections and build your business, your company, contacts, and build your professional network. Second, they must be two-way. The relationships are two-way, and that is important. It's not just what information you can get out of it, but it's also what you can contribute. What's great about it is it's an unobtrusive tool to stay in touch. You used to be able to simply hand someone your resume and get hired, which was great. That doesn't work anymore. 70 to 80% of people find jobs through networking. It's also a great way to remember people. You might meet a person and get their business card. Then you go home that night and look them up on LinkedIn. Now you can stay connected, see a photo, and this helps you remember people and maintain your relationship with them. Remember, LinkedIn is not Facebook, nor is it Twitter. It's not about fun and games, and not a place for you to go and spy on your friends, check people's Facebook status, things of that nature. It's not created for social purposes, nor is it for your own personal thoughts, daily musings, or tweets. You're probably wondering, who is on LinkedIn? The average person on LinkedIn is a college-educated 43-year-old making $107,000 annually. Next, more than a quarter are senior executives. On LinkedIn, every Fortune 500 company is represented. That's why many recruiters rely on the site to find even the highest caliber of executives. So you may say to yourself, I'm not a college-educated 43-year-old. I don't earn $107,000 a year, nor am I a senior executive working for a Fortune 500 company. But that doesn't matter. Guess who's going to be hiring you? Who better to know or connect with than that guy? Or maybe when you link in, that's the HR professional or the business owner who's also on LinkedIn. That's why LinkedIn is for everyone and why you need to be on LinkedIn. It's really easy to get started and set up. I'm going to show you the step-by-step instructions of how to do so. First, sign up. The next thing you need to do is learn how to create a profile. How would you do that? By utilizing the LinkedIn Learning Center. Next, join relevant groups to make connections and contribute. Make connections with other professionals, like people from high school or college, places you have worked in the community, maybe some other contacts. So go ahead, start building your network and making connections with other professionals with similar interests. Then you'll see where the power of networking can take you in your job search and in your career. Because of laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act, you have the right to equal opportunities in the workplace. The ADA is an anti-discrimination law that ensures you have full access to all benefits and the opportunities that everyone else has. Both you and your employer have responsibilities for ensuring this equal access. It's the employer's responsibility to provide you with reasonable accommodations that will allow you to perform the necessary tasks on your job. I'll give you a few examples of those that are listed here. Suppose you're involved in meetings, or you need to contact people through the telephone. Maybe communicating with your coworkers, as well as being involved in different trainings, such as we have listed here. It is your responsibility to make your needs known to the employer so that they understand what accommodations you require to perform your job. This process is called self-advocating, which means that you are your own advocate and get the necessary support you need in order to perform your job. If you do not let your employer know what accommodation you need, then they are not required to provide anything. Self-advocating and your responsibility as far as asking for the right type of accommodations. How do you know you're asking for the right type of accommodations? Part of self-advocating and asking for the right accommodations is knowing what is available and commonly used in the workplace. And that's the focus of this video. Now I'm going to describe accommodations most often used in the workplace. It's important to learn that you have options and what those options are. This video will help you understand how to inform and recommend to the company the types of accommodations and needs to best suit you. According to the Job Accommodation Network, the acronym is JAN, you can see their website here, www.askjan.org. When companies are making decisions on how to provide accommodations, they have certain questions and concerns that they tend to ask. If you do not inform them of your needs or the accommodations, then they won't know. It's a good idea to have these in mind. I encourage you to explain your hearing loss, what that means, as you can see here. First off, what does it mean to have hearing loss for you? Do you have a hearing aid? Can you read lips? Are you profoundly deaf? Or rely completely on sign language? It's important to explain those points. Number 2, what is your preferred mode of communication with those around you? Third, do you use any audible technology, such as an FM loop? And will the company provide that for you? The second question here specifically relates to your job duties and responsibilities. First, you have to consider what type of duties it entails. Are any of those duties or responsibilities going to be a struggle as a result of your hearing loss? And who will you be communicating with, as well as how often? Where will the communication happen? Will there be team meetings, one-on-one, emails, telephone conversations? Those type of points need to be covered. And it's important that you know all of these in order to help you have a better rapport with the company, as well as setting up the best accommodation and support you need. When considering different job accommodations available in the workplace, it's helpful to think about them as they relate to different situations. Communication may be a challenge. The following categories that you see here are articles from the website that I mentioned earlier, the Job Accommodations Network website. It's entitled Accommodation and Compliance Series, Employees with Hearing Loss. Those 3 categories are listed here: difficulty communicating face-to-face, difficulty communicating in groups, meetings, or trainings, as well as difficulty communicating by telephone. Now let's look at each of these situations and consider the common accommodation options that can help you overcome these communication barriers. Difficulty communicating face-to-face. It can be difficult to communicate face-to-face with a coworker, but there are many technologies and options for overcoming this barrier. One thing you must always take into account before agreeing to use an accommodation is to make sure that it fits your preferred method of communicating. That means if you feel that reading and writing is not your strong suit, it's probably not wise to communicate in that manner. Now you see we have a list of different accommodations that you can choose from. Sign language interpreters. They can be used both in person or through VRI. CART means that if people are speaking in the room, there's a person listening and captioning that on a screen. The next one is computers. There are software that can recognize people's voice and translate that into text. Hearing devices that can enhance your hearing, such as FM loops, text messaging, or instant messaging, as well as the typical pen and paper method. Computers can also be utilized for communication. Telephones, the iPads that you've seen can be used. Or you know those dry erase boards? That's another option. Even a chalkboard can be utilized. And finally, you can go ahead and encourage your coworkers to learn just the basics in sign language. Difficulty communicating in groups, meetings, or trainings. This can often be a challenge and requires a combination of technology and knowledge on the part of your coworkers. Accommodation options are listed here. The sign language interpreter, we have CART, C-A-R-T, record and transcribing meetings, providing written materials in advance, making sure that DVDs, videos, and web content is captioned. Meet in small groups and sit at a round table to facilitate lip reading. Set up room to accommodate deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Educate staff on meeting etiquette. For example, one person talking at a time. People who are speaking should not cover their mouth, so that a hard of hearing person is able to effectively lip read. And third, maintain eye contact with the individual. Don't look around the room as you're speaking, but look directly at the person. This list can help you communicate more effectively in meetings and trainings. Difficulty using a telephone. The telephone is an obvious barrier for a deaf employee. There are many technologies that can provide accommodations, such as these listed here. We have the video relay service, VRS. There are telephones that have captioning, like CapTel, as well as voicemail transcription, which transcribes voicemail to email or to a text message. Use of email, texting, and instant messaging rather than the telephone. As you can see, there are many accommodation options to choose from. The most important thing is to make sure that you request what is right for you. Consider the questions we discussed earlier as far as your needs for hearing loss and what is needed to help you do your job. If you're aware of them, write a list, provide them to the employer, let them set up a plan in order to accommodate you appropriately. If those steps are ineffective, be sure to inform them of that. It is in the interest of everyone that you receive the right accommodation so that you can do your very best on the job. There are basic rules and tips to follow when making telephone calls. Some rules and tips are true whether you are a deaf or a hearing person. Other rules and tips are necessary to understand when you are making a VRS call. No matter what kind of call you are making, you need to know what to do in order to make the call a success. It is common for people to make assumptions about others when talking to them on the telephone. Within the first minute of conversation, people have often formulated an opinion about your personality, your background, education, and ability. You must be aware of this and work to counter any negative assumptions. Knowing how to use VRS to place calls and communicate will effectively help you present yourself in the most positive way. There are general rules and tips that apply to everyone that can help you. Let's look at and discuss some of those points. Being courteous and polite when speaking to anyone over the telephone is as important as when you're talking with someone face to face. If one senses you're rude and you have all of these demands, that may be a turnoff. Using good manners when placing a call can be much more effective than being rude and demanding. When you place a call, always identify yourself. Tell them your first and last name clearly and give them the reason why you're calling. For example, "Hello, my name is Bob Jones, and I'm calling to speak with Mr. Roy." Another example here would be, "Hi, my name is Sue Phipps, and I need to speak with a manager." Once you have the person you'd like to speak with on the phone, ask them if it's a convenient time to talk. You might also give them an idea of how much time you are requesting. Do you have a few moments to chat? Or maybe you can be more specific and say, "Could I have about 10 minutes of your time to discuss an issue?" If you call to speak to someone and get their voicemail, make sure you sign clearly so the interpreter can read and understand as well as relay the message clearly. If you sign too fast, the interpreter will have to voice that message too fast, and on the answering machine it will be difficult to understand, and they will have to repeat the message over and over again, which won't make them happy. When you receive a call, you need to be prepared with a professional greeting. Decide what you will say every time you answer your phone, and use it. Here are two examples. "Hello, this is Ann Stone. May I help you?" Or, "Hello, Jim Jones speaking." When you're speaking with someone through a video phone, be an active participant in the conversation, which means when you're on the phone, remember what is being said so you can write it down after the call is over to help you remember. Next, use the person's name when talking. And third, ask questions if you are unclear about anything that's being discussed. Now let's look at some rules and tips to know when placing a VRS call. Let's break it down into two sections. The first one, tips for preparing to make a VRS call. The second one, tips to follow during the VRS call. Here are some tips to prepare for making a VRS call. Before you place a VRS call, there are several things you need to consider to prepare for that call. First, it is important to wear something solid. Not too many colors, nothing too crazy. it makes it difficult for the interpreter to read your signs. It's better to have one solid color, making it easier for them to read. Next, put your video phone in a place that does not have a window in the background, causing lots of glare, making it difficult for the interpreter to see. Use the restroom before you place your call. Do not expect the interpreter to sit and wait before you place your call for you to go to the restroom. And next, don't expect the interpreter to find numbers for you. Have it ready before placing your call. Here are some tips to follow while making a VRS call. Providing a brief explanation to the interpreter of who you're calling and why makes the call go smoother. Let the interpreter know if you will be making multiple calls. Be patient when giving out phone numbers and sign them in the correct pattern. 810-555-1234. Not 810-555-1234. More tips on how to use a VRS call. Do not use sign names. Spell out the person's name for the interpreter at least once. The interpreter doesn't know who A on the head or L on the chest is, so set up the sign name first. Let them know who it is. That way, they can use it for the rest of the phone call. Don't get mad at the interpreter's expressions or attitude during the call. They are reflecting to you what a hearing caller is saying, not their own personal feelings. Next, be in control of your own phone call. Do not expect the interpreter to explain everything. It's your call. Knowing these few simple rules and following these tips we discussed will allow you to effectively use VRS as a tool, not only for personal, but professional communication as well.